Hey, I'm Katie, and I'm a grateful recovering addict today. And thank you all for attending. Today, we're going to go off of um, a day at a time. And today's, it's not the one for November, but it says determination, our clenched jaw resolve that we can do something about everything is perhaps the greatest hindrance of achieving serenity. Our old tapes tell us the difficult can be done immediately. The impossible will take a little longer. So we tighten up and prepare ourselves for battle, even though we know from long experience that our own will doom us in advance to failure. Over and over, we are told in the program that we must let go and let God, and we eventually do find serenity when we put aside our own will while accepting his for us. I am learning to relax my stubborn grip. Do I allow the situations to unfold for themselves? Um, and it really hits home because I'm that person that has to do something about everything. I have to fix everything. Um, because I feel if I can't fix it, then I'm no good for anybody. And if the words let go and let God are what you struggle on out of that entire thing, let go and trust the process is how I take it. Just tell him he's right. Let it end. No, I can't let him walk away. I have to be able to say what I need to say. Because if I don't say what I have to say, I'm going to fume. And then it's going to get worse. Um, the immediate them walking in the door and, hey, did you do this? Instead of waiting to see if the comment is, hey, your drink's in the car. My initial response when he walks in the door with only his soda is, well, did you get me mine? Did you get me my drink? Because I've been at home all day. Instead of allowing the situation to play out and hear what the other person has to say. In recovery, this is the hardest thing for us to do, especially when those are people that we've harmed, when they're people that are addictions and our struggles have unintentionally harmed. Because, at least in my addiction, I didn't intentionally harm somebody by walking away. I pulled away in order to not hurt them because I didn't want to be evil and vindictive to them. So I pulled away because if I wasn't standing with them and I wasn't around them, then I couldn't hurt them. And in rekindling those relationships, I have to remember that I have to let situations play out. When I'm on the phone, when I'm at the doctor's office, I have to not allow myself to jump to what I think is going to happen and actually see what does happen, because my brain's the worst place there. It'll automatically go to the worst. It automatically goes to everybody hates me and I'm the problem. So, how do we fix it? How do we handle everyday situations with those voices in our head and not allow it to take over the way we respond in our in these situations, both calm situations and heated situations? Anybody? Anybody?
Can you repeat it? Wait, go ahead. Whoever was going to go, you go.
Did you need a repeat on the question?
Yeah.
How do you handle the situations and let them happen before you respond? Or do you respond before the situation happens and then have to backtrack because we've responded incorrectly to something that didn't happen because we assumed it was going to, because we have to be
I
the one to
typically,
fix it.
I typically have to backtrack.
So, how do you think you can do it differently?
I feel like keeping questions very targeted instead of like automatically assuming that they didn't do what we needed them to do or wanted them to do. To talk about something random first and then let the rest of the conversation kind of happen naturally.
Yeah. So, how do you handle situations that don't play out the way you expected them to?
Honestly, it's more of just okay, and I just walk away because
So,
I know if I
that's
don't
that
walk away,
whole,
I'm gonna get upset.
yep, and that's that whole let go, let God concept that the book talks about, or let go and trust process, because the situation that doesn't work out then, have you ever had the time where a situation didn't work out, but it ended up working out for the better afterwards?
Yup.
And are you like me, where you got angry because the first half of the situation didn't work right? But at the end, you're calling yourself stupid or dumb for even responding that way because I jumped to what I assumed was going on.
I definitely jump to conclusions.
Um, Someone goes, I struggle with this big time, but I've learned to just listen all the way out before I even think of how to respond. How does that work for you? Is it difficult? Is it something that took you a long time to understand how to do?
Yeah, I mean, I still struggle with it. But it's something that I have to do. It's
So,
not.
can you walk me through a situation and explain to us how you keep yourself calm in order to listen to it all the way out?
Well, I do it because of my unconditional love for my daughter. Because I know that a lot of the things that she's saying, are not coming from, you know, her heart or anything. Like they're things that are being said and used to hurt me. And so I just have to, I mean, it's taken a while. It's not like it isn't something that has happened overnight. And like I said, I still
And do
struggle.
you still and you still struggle with it?
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, like an example, she might say something like really, really, that digs really deep, in the beginning, right? And I'll think about that, and she'll keep talking, but I'll be stuck right there, what she said initially. Instead of continuing to listen what she's saying, I would be stuck right there waiting for her to finish so I could fire back. And
Because
that
your
wasn't
brain held
good.
on to the one sentence
Right.
and nothing else. Right.
Exactly. So I had to learn to go get past that. I had to learn to understand that things that I have, that certain people have helped me learn and educated me on, just being able to take that and try to turn it into a better resolution at the end.
Yeah.
Because that's what's important. What's important is the resolution to what's really the problem and what's really causing the anger and the outburst and the and if you sit there and argue and go back and forth and you're completely overlooking the problem at hand and just creating more in the process. So I've just it is not easy. It is not easy, I'll tell you. Because I
But
feel like
most things that are worth the outcome aren't easy.
right. Yeah.
I mean, those of us that have had children or, care for children, look at the process it took for that child to be here. It is a 9-month strenuous process
Yeah.
just for this one section. And then you have an 18-year process where this is still constantly changing. So you have to change with it. And
Yeah.
I've noticed that people seem to be able to change for others much quicker and much easier than they're willing to put the work in to change for themselves, especially in recovery.
Yeah.
Because at this point in time in recovery, that concept of letting go and the fact that you don't have control over everything in your life, the fact that some things are just out of your control and you have to just let it play out. That concept is very scary for addicts in general because we believed that we had a control over everything we did, a control over how much we used, a control over who we hung with, who we spoke with, when we used, what we used, when in actuality we had no control. So to give up that control when we fight so hard to take control over our lives and our demons is a very scary process. But this is one where you then build your support system. So you understand that you have people to bounce things off of, where your feelings and your emotions about the situations are valid, but you have to let the situation play out. It's it's like the driving test. You go to take your driving test and all you can do is just take it. The situation is going to play out how the situation plays out, and you can't control outside of doing what your best. You can't control what the test proctor puts on that paperwork. You do the best you can. In life, it is socially unacceptable just to do the best you can. You're supposed to be perfect. And a rough pill for people to swallow is that nobody is perfect. We all struggle with something. Um, if you had to explain to somebody how you calm yourself down to finish listening to somebody, how would you guys explain your calm down process so that way you can listen to what other people have to say? Anybody?
So for me, it's similar to what I've said before, but My therapist said it's helpful to remind yourself that when we're feeling a certain way, our mind tends to run and we tell ourselves a story that is usually not true about the other person or ourselves. And to remember that when this other person is speaking, that they are also telling themselves a story. And in order for us to find out the truth behind stories, we need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to give them the space to be able to communicate with you. So I try to remind myself to have empathy, and that even though I'm feeling a certain way and have amplified emotions, like I need to get my word out first, to remember to have that respect from who is not dealing with the same mental health or may not be. You have to let them have that space to be able to speak as well. And so I just try to take steps in my mind to remind me, hey, what is going on right now may or may not be true. Let's get to a point where we can both communicate. And in order to do that, one person has to be subtle enough to allow the other to communicate. If both people are yelling and fighting and struggling to get their word out, you're not going to get
Yeah.
anywhere.
Does
And that's
anybody
a lot of
else?
self-help practice.
That is a
The
lot of
line
self.
that, to play off of what they said, the line that I always use with my kids is, well, if you're both yelling, is anybody truly listening to each other? Obviously, the consensus is always no, nobody is listening. All it is yelling. So if we're going to try to get our points across, then we need to talk like human beings.
So, what happens if you're the one talking and someone is yelling? How do you get your point across? How do you handle those situations?
I'm not going to get my point across in the moment because them yelling is only going to make me escalate. So if they're yelling, I'm just going to walk away until they're calm enough to actually talk to me.
We have a rule that we use the word time out if neither one of us feel that we can communicate what we need to without hurting the other's feelings.
So, having a timeout's amazing.
Mhm.
But is there a time limit on that timeout so that way the conversation and the topic doesn't get forgotten?
Yes, we have to negotiate a time when we can come back to it and talk, even if it's not right away. But I like to do, like, for me, I have to be able to have this settled within 24 hours. Otherwise, I don't sleep good and things escalate. And that's communicated between us. Sometimes it's not always respected, but that's something we're both working on.
And
But that's because you have to understand that at some point that person may not be ready in the 24-hour period.
Exactly.
but
But
that's also
what were you
the short time framing like that is also indicative to the BPD and things like that, not being able to wait.
mm-hmm.
It's something I struggle with, and it's almost anything. Patience is not a virtue BPD has very well.
So how do
Yeah,
you
I agree with
keep
that.
yourself calm?
Usually shut down.
Okay.
Isolation. Oh my
Right,
God.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Shut down. I generally that at a point now where it's just time to go back to sleep.
Okay. So what can we do that's different? Because sleeping the day away doesn't actually take care of the problems. The problems are still there when we wake up. What else could we do? Let's put it that way.
I have to find healthy distractions. For me, it might be a movie, it might be reading a book, it might be taking my son for a walk. Healthy distractions that aren't going to amplify my emotions about the feelings of abandonment because I'm not having the communication I want
That is a beautiful way to do it
right.
because those are things that you enjoy doing. Now, is it selfish to take time for ourselves? Are we told it's selfish to take time for ourselves?
We're
all the
told it's selfish, and in a way it is, but it's a good kind of selfish.
self-love.
Explain that to me. How is selfishness good?
Because sometimes it's needed because we have to put ourselves first sometimes.
Because in our recoveries, no matter how much we put other people first, if we don't take the time to make sure we are correct in our recovery, nothing is correct in our recovery. If we are spending all of our energy helping everybody else and don't take any time to assess what's going on internally, at least for me, I explode. You have people who internalize and shut down. You have people who literally just hide. You have people like me who explode. So, and that goes back to a couple of weeks ago where it's a boundary. And these are all different types of boundaries where you have to put the boundary on yourself that I can't fix everything. It's not my job to control everything. And it sounds funny that that's a boundary, but I can't be the only one in this room who feels like if I'm physically moving, I have to be able to fix the problems. Does anybody else in the room have that feeling?
Definitely.
I used to.
I'm definitely a person that wants to fix everything, even if it can't be fixed.
I'm a
And
fixer.
that's, you're a fixer too. Yeah. That's where the comment of um, the line this was the difficult can be done immediately and the impossible will take a little longer. There's always a fix. There's always a solution. And I have come to find out that sometimes the solution is there's not a solution. Sometimes the solution is unknown because I don't have the factors. And I'm a really mathematical person, so I have to be able to know all the factors. And not having the factors makes me have to be able to control the situation even more. And it's where I struggle. But I've learned that with this group and having my support system, that I don't have to have complete control over everything.
What do you do when
That
you have zero control?
zero control over all situations or over some situations.
Over that situation, the major situation, whatever that current hurdle is. When all you can do is stare it in your face, but there's literally no action you can take that's not dependent on
You can
somebody else's.
you control the way you respond and
Sit and be still.
how difficult you make the time in between when the situation starts and the situation gets to end. The you may not have control over the timeline. You have control over how difficult you allow that situation to be on you. You still have some control. You just don't have the main control. And correct me if I'm wrong, but being male, males are used to having the main control in big situations.
Generally speaking, I had control, quote unquote, of everything, the whole household,
Hmm. And
even
now
even not
the
being the one
situation
working.
has changed. But now the situation has changed.
On top
And
of the fact that there's no circumstances that are within my own control of ending any of it.
And that's where you
It's like
have
sitting.
to sit.
It's like sitting in county and not knowing how long you got to be there.
Yeah, it is. But it's knowing that in at the end of it, it's knowing the end is coming. It's just not knowing when. So my therapist would tell me to look at the positives of what I know the situation is. Understand how I control how much extra negative emotion is in the situation. Because when I'm negative, other people are negative. Because the people I deal with are a lot of match energy people. So it's controlling my responses to people, my responses to the situation at hand, knowing that the situation is too big for me to have any controlling factor. But it's kind of like, what did you do? What did you do during the pregnancies when you had no control over how difficult the pregnancy was?
All I know is I know if I escalate, everything else escalates. If I can keep control and of my state of mind and my amplified emotions, it will de-escalate the situation because you can't sit there and fight a wall for very long. You're not going to get anywhere. So
I don't know. My knuckles say otherwise.
Nope.
what I'm saying.
The wall bit you because you were hitting an inanimate object.
But if he's sitting there yelling at the wind, he's not going to keep yelling at the wind. But if I can control myself and not amplify or escalate the situation, it will help de escalate the environment. And I have
Yep.
to remember that. And the whole purpose of me even trying to become better with my mental health and recognizing it is for my son. So reminding myself, hey, you can't escalate like he is because you need this to stop for him, for my baby. So how can I get this situation to de-escalate as quickly as possible by not being so overly reactive and amplifying my emotions to match his, and reminding myself that if I have to go smoke, if I need to go take a walk, if I need to remove myself to do so, then I have to remind myself why I'm doing that. I'm removing myself for my son to make the situation better for him. So, and
But
counting,
it's knowing that you have control over your actions and your words.
right.
And that is what you have control over in this situation right now.
And with that, it makes me feel like I have a little bit of power back, because when you're in those situations, you feel powerless because you feel like things that are not in your control are taking over, but you get power back by knowing you are in control of yourself, at least, and how you act on something or react.
That is a very good way of putting it.
And it's really fucking hard.
It is.
For BPD and bipolar, learning how to control your initial reactions and make them responses and not reactions is legitimately the core basis of what we struggle with.
Yeah,
Beyond
it's
just
Mm-hmm.
the abandonment trigger, but as far as an interpersonal interaction
yeah,
standpoint, that is the core basis of what we struggle with from the disorder in general.
and it's just
Yeah,
And
it's,
I
I'm sure
agree.
out of everybody here that's got BPD and or bipolar in this listing I'm seeing, nobody's gonna argue with that. that bad.
No.
Yeah.
I
It's
agree
just
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just shedding light that no matter how beautifully you can say it or how much you can understand it, acting on these things is very hard, and it's a daily practice. It's a
It
daily.
is. But to be able to put the words to it, to verbalize what it is I'm supposed to be doing, subconsciously, it's like another sticky note of, hey, look, this is what I'm supposed to do. And subconsciously, if we continue to tell ourselves these things while we work on them, it is more likely for it to take a foothold than just telling ourselves them or just attempting to do the work.
Right. Exactly. I agree.
Does anybody else have, excuse me, does anybody else have anything they would like to say on the topic and how it resonates with them or where they struggle with this topic? Because I think I'll go about another 10 minutes before we do burning desires and close out.
I have a really hard time with slowing myself down. That way I'm not reacting as much. And mine is a lot of, I feel like I don't have that like second like filter to be like, oh, this might hurt somebody's feelings. I probably shouldn't say that.
So, how, knowing that that is a struggle that you have, how can, how do you think you could work? And I know that with your diagnosis that it's not something that will ever be standard, okay? But how do you think you could adjust it where you do take that second? And even if it's not an all the
I
time thing.
I try to, and it might sound like it wouldn't work, but for me it does. I try to slow down and think of it as if I'm talking to my kid, because I wouldn't give my kid the same reaction that I'd give just to anybody.
Yeah.
And having that slow down and make me actually think of like, okay, how would I react if it was my kid? Gives me that second of, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't say that.
Okay. But knowing you're diagnosed, I'm going to challenge you. What happens when it's right before the flashes start? And I say flashes so that we don't give away diagnosis by other terms.
Well, yeah. What happens? I think the better way to word that question is
When the flash
what
warning hits.
happens what
When,
happens when the stimulants for anybody gets to the point where it's controllable, 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 and then it's not.
and then all of a
Because
sudden
at
the
that
flash warning
point,
kicks in and you're trying not to go into full signal mode.
whatever the situation is. So, what happens when you get to that point where you've tried talking to them and you've tried slowing down like they're your kid, but they keep escalating the situation? How do you keep yourself from that explosion?
And I bring that explosion up specifically because that's the point where I don't have an answer. Generally
Yeah,
speaking,
Well,
I don't
if I
and
know.
hit flash warning mode, I'm split. It's over.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think when I get that. Like my vision like goes black, and half the time like I'll just react, and then afterwards I'll realize, oh fuck, I shouldn't have reacted like that, and then I have to go back and retrace my steps and apologize where apologies are needed.
So it's holding yourself accountable. So because of your diagnosis, there's almost not, it almost immediately goes, you don't have the tick tick. So for those of us that are a little different in diagnosis, how do you handle the situation when you're trying to keep it calm, but the situation keeps escalating? How do you handle yourself and keep yourself from saying something you don't want to say, behaving in a way you don't want to behave?
I have to walk away if I'm at that. I have to go outside.
So what happens if you don't have the ability to walk away?
I was gonna say, because I still struggle with turning right back down the hallway. Oh, but wait, I missed.
Yeah. I start to walk away and then they say something. They got to have the last word because you walk away. How do we handle those situations?
I struggle with that, but right now, what I do with that is I just continuously communicate timeout. I cannot right now. I cannot. I will have an episode if this continues. Like I just communicate that, and if it's not respected, then unfortunately, an episode usually happens.
Candy
Like
start
I don't.
looking at the
There's
TV.
not a lot I can do.
But that's where you've taken control over the situation to the manner in which you could, and you've been able, and you're trying to control your responses. And that's when you verbalized, hey, look, I need this break. Um, because you're trying to control your responses in a situation you can't control.
Son, your
Somebody
spelling's
goes,
about as bad as mine.
yep. Somebody goes, I normally walk away because I normally start disassociating. Absolutely. Um, and the disassociation is is the struggle, because for those of us who can't control it when we disassociate, um, that's when they acted so out of character comes into play. And you're like, well, yeah, I didn't have control. But it's learning to try and control as much of your responses as possible. It's trying to get a hold on how much we allow people to get under our skin and allow us to become the person that they think we are, not the person we're actively trying to become. And I hope that makes sense for people, because the reason why people will continue to push is because they're used to us behaving and responding in a certain way. And because their expectation is that we do this, when we don't meet their expectations, they will then do what they need to get us to respond in the way they expected.
I agree. I like how you put that because that actually opened a perspective for me that I haven't thought about in a long time. So thank you.
Because the one thing people as a whole struggle with is we put expectations on the way somebody's supposed to respond. Somebody's going to respond. Somebody's going to behave based on the pattern that has been established by that person or people in that category in our past and in our recovery when we are rebuilding relationships, especially with people in which we've hurt when we were in our addictions. Um, they expect us to respond in the manner that we did when we were in our addictions and in the shit. And they don't want the change because the change is real conversation. Hold true to what your expectations of your life is. Hold true to your expectations on how you handle something. But understand that having expectations and how other people handle a situation 9 out of 10 times will lead you to disappointment because we barely hit our expectations for ourselves. How can we expect somebody to hit our expectations we have for them?
Yes, it is being recorded. I will have everything. I got last week's and this one both to do the editing and get them uploaded. But you have the
Yeah.
overall YouTube link, don't you? If not, I will put it
If she does,
in the recovery chat here in the to get everybody a reminder.
drop it in Tuesday's recovery
Okay.
tab.
Yes.
Um, okay. I was just about to end anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we're pushing 45 now.
yep. Um, so,
Hold on, we got one more typing.
oh,
You're more than welcome to, Fairy. More than welcome to.
abs- absolutely. And Fairy, if you happen to get somebody in your server that wants to be a part, um, just tag me in that server and I will come have that conversation in a heartbeat. But I want to leave you with two things. Um, and it says, may I loosen my jaw, my tight fist, my general uptightness, outward indications of the do it myself syndrome, which has gotten me into trouble before. May I know from experience that this attitude of keep a grip on yourself and on everybody else too is accompanied by independence or impatience and followed by frustration. May I merge my own will with the greater will of God. And then it says, today I will remember, let up on the stranglehold. We don't have to have a white knuckle grip on everything in life. It's okay to just ride. It's okay to not have that control. Sometimes when we let go, the good things start showing. And with that, I'm Katie and I'm a grateful alcoholic addict.